Let's talk about 4A, where I don't think we're really surprised that East Noble is here at this point.
Yeah.
We thought Mississinawa would give them a game. They gave them a game for about 3 quarters-ish. But, of course, East Noble goes on to win 30-14 at Mississinawa. They're going to face a Hobart program that, if you're a fan of football in the state of Indiana, you're familiar with what the Brickies have done in the past. And what they've done this season, especially in the playoffs, is play really good defense. So what do you see as being the big key in Kendall Vegas on Friday night as these two collide for a 4A semi-state?
Can Hobart take away Bailey Parker? I mean, that's as simple as it comes down to. I mean, I listened to the pregame going down to Eastbrook last week before the Mississinawa game, and they're talking about Bailey Parker. And the big thing was going to be slow him down. And then I hear the fourth quarter, and the lesson was they couldn't do it. I think it's as simple as it comes, is slow down Bailey Parker. I think East Noble can be a beatable football team if you take him away, but nobody can do it thus far. I mean, who knows who can? Can Hobart? They're next up.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned that. Parker had 241 yards passing, a couple of touchdowns, and 137 yards running. When you are a pretty good football team and your whole focus is on trying to stop him, and then he goes off for almost 250 yards passing and almost 150 yards running, it didn't work.
Yeah.
It didn't work. For East Noble, when you talk about what they've been able to do on the defensive side of the football, it gets lost, I think, in Bailey Parker and the offense averaging about 37 points a game. But they're only giving up 13 points a contest, and you knew what Mississinawa was going to do last week. They didn't completely stop it, but they slowed it down, and they let it be less effective. You're talking about Cade Campbell the week before had 40-odd carries for 310 yards. He went for a $148, which is generally pretty good, but it's half of what he got the week before. So when you take on this Hobart team, what are you really focusing on defensively? Because it seems like they've been able, like I said, they've been able to slow what the other team does down enough to give the offense a chance to win it, and the offense does.
And I think it's a balanced defense in terms of, look, we can stop the run, we can play you against the pass, we can bring pressure, we can sit back in coverage. It can do a lot of different things, and it's not just Bailey Parker even on that defense. They got a lot of guys, particularly up front. I think those front 7 guys really don't get a lot of credit, but they should, because they've been able to take a myriad amount of attack plans on them and really adjust to what they need to stop. This is just another week of having to do that. But I think it goes back to Hobart and saying, what do they do to limit Bailey Parker? That's a question. I mean, his season low in total yards in a game is 244 in a 56-7 blowout against Belmont, in which he didn't play late in the game. So, I mean, he's at least going for 250 total yards every single football game.
They've been so consistent week in and week out, and that is what has really impressed me about East Noble. When I was reading some stories on Hobart, they were talking about, the word that kept coming up was physical. This is a physical team. This is a team that enjoys the physical nature of football. DJ Lipke last week goes for 18 carries, 207 yards rushing, and a touchdown. That's what East Noble is going to have to focus on to a certain degree. I think a lot of people think of East Noble, this year's East Noble team, as a finesse team, but they really have been able to answer the bell physically when they faced more physical teams like DeKalb or Mishawaka.
Mishawaka, Plymouth. I mean, yeah, those are the 3 that come to mind. So they start the week off with, or the season off with Plymouth and Mishawaka, and they win those battles in the trenches. We talk so much about DeKalb and how big and physical they were up front, and they dominated them twice. You know what I mean? Leo even taking care of business twice against the Lions. So this team is battle tested in terms of physical football, and I like their chances, especially on the turf at home.
Yeah, what's the biggest key to Friday night, and how do you see this playing out in total?
Comes down to Bailey Parker. If he can execute, if he can, Hobart, I think, needs to force a couple turnovers with Bailey Parker, and that offense, get some short fields, execute. I think if you can get some momentum early and stick around, you can make some plays. But I think East Noble, they're so good at making those fast starts. It's something I think Mississinawa did a good job last week in taking away, was that, man, you blink and you're down a couple touchdowns, So I think that's key for Hobart, but comes down to Bailey Parker and being able to limit him.
Anybody that can beat New Prairie the way they beat New Prairie last week certainly deserves a lot of consideration. But East Noble, I think, should be slightly favored, I would think, in this one. Although I think Harrell's has them as an underdog, which kind of surprised me. I guess that's based on the Sagarin ratings and based on the fact that although they're like 21 and 22 in the state, right next to each other overall in Sagarin ratings, just I guess the strength of the region this year so far.
Yeah, I think so. What it comes down to, as good as the NE8 was, the region I think is better, particularly this season. Really a lot of depth with those teams up there this year.